guys, so I don't usually do this, but I have a lot of thoughts about Justice League, and so I kind of wanted to get them out there. So today, I'm doing a roughly sort of unscripted video about what I thought about the movie. And so it's not going to have a whole lot of editing, but I'm just going to go off script and talk about what I thought of the film. So without further ado, let's just jump into this, because I don't want to stall any more than I have to. So Justice League, I saw it last night. I did not hate it, and I think that's important to say before I get into this, because it's it's gonna sound like I did. It's very inoffensive. Like the thing is, it's hard to hate. There's nothing about it that's like, oh my gosh, it takes itself so seriously. Oh man, it's really insulting to my intelligence or something, right? It's very lighthearted, and to that point, with Batman v Superman, it's such a movie that's trying to be so smart and intelligent and deep and whatever, and so when you think it's not that, then you're like, man, that's pretentious. But with this, it's far less pretentious. It's just so lighthearted and fluffy that it's hard to hate because of that. But ultimately, and I'm gonna get into this, I think it's less admirable of a film than Batman v Superman, almost. Because like pretentious movies are movies that even if they are not as smart as they think they are, they still have a vision and something that is unique to say. And this movie does not have that, which we're gonna get to. It's really, Justice League is the first superhero movie in a while that has made me kind of wish that there weren't as many superhero movies, and made me sort of exhausted. And I didn't really like Thor Ragnarok, which came out a few weeks ago. I know I haven't done a video about that, but I did a podcast if you want to check that out. That's in the description below. I didn't love Thor Ragnarok either, and so this past month has made me just kind of tired of seeing the same old stuff, But so this movie, Justice League, it's not as bad as Suicide Squad. That's a big plus. It's hard to be as bad as Suicide Squad, but it's not as bad. It's not an incoherent mess, which is why it's not as bad. It at least makes sense and is watchable. So there is enjoyment, and like I said, it's lighthearted and inoffensive. So it's something that would be easy to enjoy and hard to hate. But like I said, at the same time, it's not as bad as Suicide Squad, but it's not as ambitious or visionary as BVS tried to be, and I don't like BVS. I mean, y'all know this very well, because I have expressed a lot of negative things about Batman v Superman, but like, I at least think I can admire its attempt at doing something unconventional and being unique and smart, right? I think it fails, but it at least is attempting to be something more than just a silly superhero movie. It's attempting to break the mold. And I think if you look at like some of the best superhero films ever made, they have been trying to do that. Logan is trying to be more than just a superhero movie. Dark Knight is trying to be more than just a superhero movie. Winter Soldier is trying to be more than just a superhero movie. And Batman v Superman is trying to be the same thing. I don't think it works, but it tries. And Justice League does not try. That's the bottom line, And what's sad is that it feels like a total abandonment of everything that was good about Batman v Superman and Man of Steel, the first two Zack Snyder films, And there wasn't a whole lot that was good, in my opinion, but the stuff that was good was very good, And so it's odd, like, they abandon even the tiniest details that were good, that made me happy in the previous films, and replace them with shallow stuff. So, like, I mean, the big stuff is different. The tone is completely different from Batman v Superman. It's so much lighter. It's so much more comic booky. The performances are vastly different. Everyone has a sense of humor now, all that stuff. And some of those things are good. It's good that they changed that. But then you've got things like the score, like Hans Zimmer did a fantastic job in Man of Steel and BVS of setting up a main theme for Batman and for Superman. And especially with Superman in Man of Steel, the Man of Steel Hans Zimmer musical score theme is phenomenal. And it was awesome. And it felt like it had gravitas and weight. And then in Justice League, they completely get rid of it. I think they play it once, like briefly, you hear a little motif from it, but other than that, the entire score of Justice League is replaced with Danny Elfman's mess of a score that's just a conglomeration of familiar superhero sounds from like Avengers and things we've heard already. It doesn't have the uniqueness or the gravitas of Hans Zimmer, you know? And it's funny, like, I know this is a bit of a tangent, but like, people seem to underestimate how much the score of a movie really affects the tone of the movie itself and how you perceive the film. You know, like if you gave Batman v Superman the score of Justice League, I guarantee you people would not hate it as much. Because while the score of Batman v Superman is great, it does give it this sense of like importance and like gravitas and like it's so big and huge, you know, it's very dramatic. But if you gave it the score of Justice League, which is a lot more generic, kind of fun superhero movie score, people would be like, oh yeah, that was a fun time, you know? And so for better or for worse, they changed the score here. And it's like, man, you've really given up the vision. So that was just kind of an example of one of the things that they changed that it just makes it feel like an entirely different movie. And if I were Zack Snyder, I would be pissed off because they really did. They sacrificed everything that he had established, and he really set up a tone in Man of Steel and Batman v Superman that, like, I don't know if it worked entirely, but it was interesting to see, and it was different. And now they've just turned his unique tone into a Marvel movie, you know? A subpar, second-rate ripoff of a Marvel movie is what this movie is now, as far as tone goes and as far as the feeling. And I know, like, the sad thing is that this all must feel very hypocritical because, like, I know I've asked for them, and many people have asked for them, to make DC movies more lighthearted, them being the filmmakers. And, you know, give it a little bit more humor, give it more spark, give it more creativity, give it more just fun-loving sort of, you know, comic bookishness to it, you know, like Marvel movies. But this feels like such a vast departure from anything we'd seen that it's like, okay, I know we asked y'all to change a little bit, but you completely got rid of any of the creativity or vision that you had before, you know? Like, why does this have to be the opposite ends of the spectrum deal, right? So, like, before, you had it super dark and super, you know, pretentious and smart and all this stuff where you're trying to be so meaningful and depth-filled and, you know, self-important. And then people were like, well, that's too dark. Can you make it a little bit more light? Then they were like, all right, we'll make it literally the lightest we can. Now this is an all-out comedy. And it's like, okay, we asked for a little bit more humor, but only the amount of humor that was necessary to make it feel authentic. Like in Batman v Superman, the lack of humor and lightheartedness really like makes it feel like it's not even the real world because people in real life have more lightheartedness in them than the characters in Batman v Superman do, even when they're in tough situations. And so what I was looking for personally, when I would say, like, I wish DC would have more lightheartedness, would be more of a tone like Captain America the Winter Soldier. You know, like Winter Soldier is a dark film, and it maintains its dark tone, but it at least still has it has enough levity to feel authentic. It's not a comedy, but it's got levity that feels authentic. And so, like, that would be what I would be looking for in the tone for a DC movie, not this. This is like, we've made it just the Avengers now, you know, and it's second-rate the Avengers. And so it's like, couldn't you have maintained your dark aesthetic and still been kind of gritty, but just introduced a little bit more levity and then just put a balance of it? You don't have to be super dark or super light. You could try for something in the middle. And whether, you know, the person to attribute that problem to is debatable. Like, whether it was Zack Snyder, not sure what he was doing, or whether it was Joss Whedon's influence just coming in and running the whole thing, who's to say? So, like I said, the movie isn't as bad as Suicide Squad, but it's not as ambitious as BVS. And that leaves us with something that is just very, very, very unbelievably dumb. I mean, that's, I'm sorry, but that's the best word to describe it. When the movie was done, I was just laughing. I started laughing because of how dumb it was and how silly the whole thing, the whole endeavor had been. And it does make up for it slightly because Batman v Superman was dumb as well, but it pretended to be super smart. This movie is dumb and it's a little bit more aware of it. But at the same time, it's like, there's nothing to latch on to, and it is very silly. Probably sillier than Batman v Superman, even though it knows it's silly. And I don't want to, like, jump to conclusions, but I feel like the action in the movie makes up the majority of the runtime. Like, the movie is pretty much, I would say, 60% action. Maybe 50%, 60%? I don't know. And unfortunately, that action is extremely lackluster stuff. Like, you know, nothing has any tension. Every action sequence is just like a messy, loud conglomeration of CGI nonsense. I mean, it's cliche at this point to say it, but this feels like a video game. And I mean, like, the Hobbit Battle of the Five Armies level of nonsense in terms of CGI action going on. And the effects themselves here are some of the worst I've seen in a long time. It's not just like I'm not just saying, oh, it was all CGI and that's the problem. The problem is it's all bad CGI, like very bad. This is some of the worst CGI that I have seen in a very, very long time. It is worse than Wonder Woman, which had pretty bad CGI as well. It's worse than Suicide Squad. It is absolutely abysmal. There's a fight, and this isn't a spoiler really, but there's a fight that Steppenwolf has with the Amazon women on Themyscira toward the beginning of the movie when he arrives. And I was watching it, and it was like watching a poorly rendered video game that was set on the grassy hills wallpaper from Windows 95. I mean, it was so fake, it hurt. And I guess that leads us to, I should probably talk about Steppenwolf, you know, he's the villain. And in my notes category, which I just wrote a few notes down, I've left this category blank because, I mean, he might very well be the worst villain ever put to the comic book screen. And I know that sounds like a big exaggeration, but it's really not. I don't want to say the worst because someone will come up with something that is worse than that, and then I'll go, oh yeah, you're right. But he is definitely one of the worst, for sure. And he spouts generic action figure one-liners, you know, you will never destroy me. Do you really think you could stop me? He has no development. And most of all, like I say, he just looks terrible. Like, I could have forgiven the writing a little bit if it looked like he existed, like he was really there. But I kid you not, when I say, like, every time he was on screen, I was just gaping. He looks horrible. He is worse than Enchantress. He is worse than Hela in Thor, who I didn't like. He is even worse than Ares in Wonder Woman, who was pretty awful. You know, like, it's pathetic. And I know some people will say that, like, oh, the heroes were the point of this movie. They really, you know, the villain doesn't have to be developed at all. But really, were they? Because, like, the heroes aren't given as much development as I would hope that they would have either in this film. There's too much action for that. And the runtime's too short. I mean, I know people said, you know, we don't need to worry about the runtime. You know, if the movie tells a good story, it doesn't matter what the runtime was. But no, it's too short. The movie is, I think it's less than 2 hours long, and it shows. Like, it is so clear that they had an editor go through and trim out things. Because, like, there's very short snippets of character development or, like, dialogue between the characters, but not enough to make the pacing feel right. There's never, like, I feel like maybe at some point, if we saw an extended edition, there might have been a point in the film where the heroes, you know, fought each other or were divided at some point, and then they have to come together at the end and set aside their differences, you know, like the whole thing that happens in these team movies. But even that is not in the film. It feels like it's been cut out. And then there are lots of, like, little plot contrivances that feel like they were just inserted in reshoots because they were like, well, we had to cut out this thing, so now we've got to explain how this happened. So, like, there's a bit where an object that the team needs is just suddenly, it disappears from a portal. A portal comes down from the sky and takes the object away. And they're like, oh no! And that's it. Like, it's very obvious that they cut out some substantial portions of this movie, some of the meat, and just had things simply happen. So yeah, it's got some entertaining moments, but it's not the triumph that I would have hoped it would have been. And I went in with very low expectations. I was like, if it pleasantly surprises me, great. I'm cheering for this movie. I want it to be good. I want Joss Whedon to have a win. I even want Zack Snyder to have a win. But I was also like, if this is bad, I'm not gonna mind. I have zero, there's nothing forcing me to think anything about this film. And you know what's even, like, I have a lot of weird other notes that I just wrote down that they aren't like massive problems, but like, this was one of these movies where like I kept being taken out of the movie by random things and going, man, that's just odd. I mean, there's the whole CGI mustache Superman thing, which I'm sure you've heard of. Henry Cavill was under a contract where he couldn't shave his mustache for another film, and so when they came and they did reshoots for Superman, they had to have him film the scenes with his mustache on and then CGI out the mustache in post, and it shows. Oh my gosh, it shows. The opening shot of the movie, it's not a good precedent to set, because literally the first shot of the movie features this mustache, anti-mustache, de-mustached CGI, and it is awful. It is so uncanny valley, so weird, and he just looks off. And so that really, it's most of his performance in the film, which is odd, because then it makes you go, man, did they reshoot most of his performance in the film? Because almost every scene he's in has this awful mustache CGI. And so you go, the stuff with the mustache CGI is the reshoots, which means that all of this stuff is reshoots, which means that this wasn't originally in the script. And so it makes you go, what was this movie before they had reshoots in it? It's just like with Rogue One, where it's like, we saw those scenes of them running on the beach in Rogue One with the plans in hand and stuff. And so you kind of wonder what was going on in the producers' heads before this product came out. What was the product before this? Would it have been better? And it's just like that, where you go, what was this? How did it get this way? And the CGI mustache thing just contributes to that. Other little note is that, like, none of the characters in this film seem shocked or surprised by anything. And I feel like even that may be something where stuff was cut out of them being shocked and surprised, because like, people find out Atlantis exists in this film, like the whole immortal city underwater in the sea. They find out Atlantis exists, and nobody seems to mind or be surprised by that. Like, it's just like, oh, cool, And I mean, I know we had, aliens show up in Man of Steel, and so maybe the world is used to weird stuff happening now. But like, wouldn't it still intrigue you if there was an entire underwater living city that had been on Earth and existed for thousands of years up to now? Wouldn't that be a little bit intriguing and make you go, oh wow, that's a bit surprising to me. And stuff like that. Superman has no idea, no one informs him when he comes back, which is not a spoiler, he was coming back. But like, when he comes back, no one informs him of who this Steppenwolf guy they're fighting is, or what his deal is, or why they're fighting him. But Superman is just totally chill with it, And also, like, Bruce Wayne, I think someone else noted this, like maybe Mr. Sunday Movies said this, but like, I noticed it in the film. It was weird. Bruce Wayne is totally chill with people revealing his secret identity left and right. Like, he's in a town with Aquaman at one point, and Aquaman literally, in front of a group of people, calls him Batman. He's just like, hey, what's up, Batman? And Bruce Wayne does not budge. He doesn't care, So it's just nitpicks, There's a lot of teleporting in the movie. Characters who were like in Metropolis suddenly show up in Kansas minutes later. How did you get there? Aquaman appears in Gotham at just the right time to stop a flood, and I guess maybe he could hear the ocean, and so he knew to be there or whatever, but it's another thing. And so, like, there are a lot of conveniences like that, which, again, I feel like were done in post. Like, I almost feel like, Aquaman maybe would have had another reason to be in Gotham in the movie, and that's why he came or something. But here it's just like he shows up out of nowhere. And so, again, it's like we're missing a substantial portion of the film that would have explained things. So yeah, I will be very interested to see if an extended edition is released. I really don't think it will, because the thing is, like, with Batman v Superman, they released an extended edition, and same with Suicide Squad, and it adds to the story, you know, like it adds different plot points and kind of explains some plot holes that had been overlooked in BVS in the theatrical cut, but it doesn't, like, rework the entire film or restructure it or reorder it at all. And I feel like that's what's happened with Justice League. Like, if you were to show us the original cut of Justice League without the reshoots or something like that, it would be an entirely different film, and, like, certain events would come way earlier and certain events would come way later in the story, you know. So at this point, I highly doubt that they will release an extended edition. And if they do, it will just be like some deleted scenes that just kind of add a little bit more humor to it or something, you know? So yeah, I'm sorry. I've been rambling. I don't know how long I've been going for this. I hope you've enjoyed me talking. You probably haven't. It's a bit of a mishmash of opinions and thoughts here. Again, I didn't hate it. It's not Suicide Squad. Suicide Squad, I hate, and I'm perfectly fine with hating it, you know? This, I guess I'm glad that some people enjoy it, and it was like, behind me, I mean, the people in the theater, not everyone, but some of the people in the theater were very loud, and they were like, yeah, you get him, that was awesome, yeah, awesome, yeah, and like, they were into it, and they were having fun, and so I guess I'm glad that some people enjoy this, but it's so tensionless, it's so predictable, there's nothing about it that has any sort of vision or aspiration to be anything more than just a dumb superhero movie. It doesn't make you feel anything, really. I mean, maybe some people, but it didn't make me feel anything, and it does feel like a second-rate attempt at making the Avengers. It's like they watched the Avengers one time, and they were like, let's just get the framework of that movie and throw in some cool CGI fight scenes and crowd-pleasing shots and stuff that looks like it's from a comic book, and people will love it. And they might be right. I mean, people may end up loving this because it's so, like, visually, it does look like it's a comic book, and it is fun, you know? But it's just fluff. I mean, that's ultimately what it comes down to. And it's poorly written fluff. People are gonna say this movie is like, it's finally setting the DC universe on track. You know, it's back on track, baby. We're finally, you know, this is the movie that's gonna herald the new age of the DC universe. We're finally going in the right direction, you know? But that's ultimately sad to me. First of all, it's sad that this is the pinnacle of the DC universe to some people, you know? Like, it's like, this subpar, mediocre movie is the best the DCEU has to offer, or whatever. You know, that's sad. But also what's sad is the fact that, like, every DC movie has had people say this. And I think even back at, like, Suicide Squad, when that came out, I did a video where I said, you know, I think in that video I said, I'm done with DC movies. And then I came back and I said, but you know what? The sad thing is, none of us are done with DC movies. We're going to keep seeing these films because they all advertise the next one. And we go, maybe that one will be good. And it's true. Like, I was right back then and I'm right now. You know, it's, people see these movies and they go, well, it was fine, but I think the next film's going to be good because it really set the framework for another great movie. You know, the next one will be better. And they've had exceptions. Wonder Woman people love. I'm not a big fan of Wonder Woman. It's fine. But it feels like every movie they've made has been Iron Man 2. You know, where Iron Man 2 was the Marvel movie, infamously, that was all about setting up other Marvel movies and advertising them. You know, it wasn't, and I actually like Iron Man 2, but what most people will say about it is that it's not good on its own merits. It's just a film that you have to watch to get to the Avengers. And that's the same thing with Justice League and with Batman v Superman and with, I wouldn't say Wonder Woman, maybe not Wonder Woman, because Wonder Woman doesn't advertise too much, but like, especially with BVS and this, it's like, you watch it and it gets you hyped for the next movie. Can't wait to see the Flash movie now. Can't wait to see the Aquaman movie now. But what happens when those movies turn out to be just as pandering and advertising for other films as this one was, you know? So, yeah. I don't hate it. I get why you might enjoy it, but it's nothing but fluff. And there's nothing substantive here, or visionary, or creative, or masterfully done in any way. So that's my opinion on it. I know I've been a little bit repetitive here. I've repeated myself multiple times. I guess I kind of tend to do that sometimes because I just sort of like, I get into a mindset where I want to make sure people get what I'm saying, and so I've repeated it many times so that it's drilled into your mind. But so yeah, comment below what you thought about the movie. I will not, this is not like one of those movies, like, when people say that they loved Suicide Squad, I go, oh man, your taste is not the best. And I know that sounds super condescending, but you know, like, but with this, like, if you liked this movie, I get it. I get you. You know, I totally get why someone would enjoy this. So comment your thoughts down below. I'm interested to see what you thought of the film. Thank you for listening to this giant rant that was very unedited and unscripted and unplanned. And if you'd like to see more of them, let me know. And that's about it. There should be some fun videos coming out soon on HP1. There's lots of stuff that I've got in the works, as well as my short film, which is still coming along smoothly. It should be out by the end of the year. So, all right. Thanks for watching, guys. Please be sure to like, subscribe, comment, and share this if you agreed with my opinions on it, or if you didn't. And I will see you in the next video. All right. Bye.